The DA has written to the Parliamentary Portfolio Committee on Police Chairperson Ian Cameron to provide clarity on delays in the VBS matter. The party laid charges against EFF leader Julius Malema and his deputy Floyd Shivambu several years back. Let's now speak to DA Member of Parliament Baxolile Nodada. Baxolile, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Just to track back a little bit, you have already laid complaints before following reports about this VBS matter. Now you want to take this matter to Parliament as well. Take us through that.
Look, good evening, and good evening to your viewers at home. Look, we've started this matter back in 2018. when we initially laid one criminal charges against those that were implicated in the VBS bank, but also ethics charges against the two members of parliament in Floyd Shivambu and Julius Malema. And if you remember, subsequent to that is that Parliament had found Floyd Shivambu guilty of not disclosing his financial interests, having received 10 million rand from the scandal of VBS Bank through his brother, and ultimately the AFF receiving 1.3 to 1.8 million from money that has been siphoned from that. There was obviously not enough information from Mr. Malema on the issue, and therefore Parliament couldn't take it forward. And then obviously it was referred to the SAPS, which are responsible for investigating criminal activities. I mean, pensioners have lost their monies, poor rural South Africans have lost their savings, stokvels, and so on. So they had a responsibility to make sure that they get to the bottom of this. We've seen the convictions that have taken place. It's been extremely slow in the past 6 years, but no report at all has come through as to the implication of the EFF and the two leaders of the EFF in Julius Malema and Floyd Shivambu. So now it becomes a responsibility of Parliament to make sure that it plays its oversight responsibility of making sure that state institutions do their job by coming to account on the corruption that has taken place in VBS Bank and what actions they've taken, particularly in this case, so that they can report back to Parliament so that we can follow through as to what needs to be done.
And as the DA, do your concerns lay solely with the EFF leadership, being Julius Malema and Floyd Shivambu, who have been allegedly implicated in this affidavit once again? What about all the others that were also implicated, who also are part of government and also the private sector? Would you also be gunning for them too?
So the whole purpose of doing this is to open the lid to deal directly with corruption. That is why we're saying that we need to call the SAPS, because we need to ask them, what have they done about corrupt politicians beyond the two that is just mentioned now? And where are those particular cases and those that are implicated, not only in the VBS Bank, but corrupt politicians that have been reported, that have been charged? Where are their cases? Because nobody should be above the law just because you are in a position of power. But we need to follow through so that we can get rid of this endemic or pandemic of corruption in our public representatives and leaders of society. So it is just opening up the lid, not just only these two individuals in Julius Malema and Floyd Shivambu, but corrupt politicians across the board. There's been a lot of scandals that are there. Some of them sit in the benches of Parliament as I speak to you today. Some of them, their cases have not been investigated or thoroughly reported on. So we need to now do our oversight responsibility to make sure that the South African Police Service does not only act on ordinary civilians and not act on leaders of society and leaders in Parliament. And that is why we need to call them in to come and account so that we make sure we get to the bottom of corruption, regardless of whether it's in the public or private sector, so that people are held accountable despite their status in society.
Yeah, and I'm sure you're one of the South Africans who's gone through that leaked affidavit as well, all 263 pages of them. What would you say was most concerning coming out of it for you?
Look, what is most concerning coming out of it for me is that, you know, there are ordinary South Africans that have put their savings through the VBS Bank. South Africans that have lost their pension in the VBS Bank. They've got their livelihoods that were completely shattered there. And they'd had the hope that tomorrow will be better for them so that they can get themselves out of poverty and change the circumstances of their birth. But there are public representatives, leaders that are alleged to have siphoned so much money of those individuals to live a lavish life, go and buy property at the expense of poor South Africans that have put their savings and pensions away. And it's important for us to make sure that we hold those people accountable and we get to the bottom of exactly what happened there so that we can get justice to be served, but more so than anything, get rid of this thing that is called corruption in our society. And if we start acting with people that think they have power beyond the ordinary South African, I'm sure we'll be able to discourage this from happening in any spaces that we find ourselves. And I think Parliament, as a vanguard of society that has public representatives that are elected by South Africans, it becomes very important for us to strengthen that institution, to get to the bottom of cases like this, so that we don't let public representatives and leaders abuse ordinary South Africans that have now lost their livelihood in this. It is actually devastating, and those revelations in that affidavit are extremely shocking.
Yeah, I mean, also some of the people who are shocked by the revelations that are coming out of there is also the former head of Treasury, Dondo Mohajani, and he's denied these allegations that have been leveled against him. So has the EFF leadership as well before. What do you see as the difference between these two denials, or that actually we should just go and investigate both of them thoroughly so and not take one's word?
Look, all of those allegations must be tested. And if there are allegations of corruption that come through in any space, they must be tested. And the law must take its course. We are party of the rule of law. And we believe that they must be tested regardless of what status those individuals hold in society. And if the South African Police Service, as a criminal investigating body in our society or in our country, comes back to us and says, look, there is no evidence against those individuals and therefore they're acquitted of those charges or they're acquitted of those allegations, then sure, fine. But if there is something that is found that they must be held accountable. Then law must take its course. And our responsibility in Parliament is to make sure that the institutions of the state, like the South African Police Service, does its due diligence, that they give report backs on cases that are so grave of this nature that have affected ordinary South Africans, like I've indicated, and therefore we need to get justice on them and then be able to get to the bottom of what happened there. And if we don't investigate, we can't test them. We can't acquit people of allegations without us actually thoroughly testing them. And that is why it's important for us to make sure that we take it through the process of Parliament so the SAPS can come and brief us, update us on these cases of corruption, especially against public representatives and leaders of society.
Then how do then the SAPS then manage that thin line between jeopardizing their case with oversharing information with members of the public, even if it may be in Parliament, as we're seeing now? Affidavits can be leaked and it can jeopardize cases and investigations that are already currently underway. You say the law must be tested, and one might say, but the law is currently being tested as we're seeing those who are accountable being convicted, some of them being charged, some of them.
Look, it's been 6 years of this particular issue that has been taking course. This aspect of the allegations, there has been no report, no update, no information regarding what is happening with the 10 million that was transferred to Mr. Floyd Shivambu. What happened to the 1.8 million that was given to the EFF that was siphoned through the brother and the cousin of the two leaders in that particular political party? Nothing has been updated in terms of that. Now, Parliament has got an oversight responsibility as elected representatives. We're not just representatives, we're legislators, lawmakers. So we need to make sure that the law itself that we make in Parliament is applied without fear or favor of what position people hold in society. And therefore, when the SAPS comes to the Portfolio Committee, it's merely an update to public representatives and legislators that have got a responsibility as per the Constitution to make sure that every single letter of the law is followed. And if these individuals' particular case is not being investigated or the allegations are not being investigated, then we need to have push that they are being investigated as part of our responsibility, without obviously jeopardizing information that the public shouldn't know and ultimately the case itself. But we need to get to the bottom of whether these allegations themselves are being tested as per our request. And if they are not being tested, we then have a responsibility to make sure that SAPS tests these allegations and we play that oversight responsibility.
Baxolile Nodada, thank you so much for your time this evening.